Hey everyone, this is Kris Graft, editor-in-chief of Gamma Sutra, doing something a little bit different in this special episode of GDC podcast. We're talking to LARS DOUCET. He's co-founder of Level Up Labs, which made the successful RPG / tower defense hybrid Defender's Quest. He also did some work with Valve on its Steam Labs experiments. In this episode, we talk less about game development and design here, and more about our experience as Texans amid the brutal winter storm that left people without access to heat, power, and in many cases even food for days. So you can feel free to skip on past this episode if that doesn't necessarily interest you. We're going to get back to the purely game development related content yet this month, but I encourage you to listen and stick around. We do talk a little bit about systems and our reliance on them, and we talk a little bit about Lars's experience making a game about power grids and energy and all of that stuff, which is obviously relevant. So one last thing, if you'd like to help people who are continuing to need help in Texas, there are a variety of mutual aid groups to donate to, and that includes Mutual Aid Houston, Mutual Aid Austin, DFW Mutual Aid, Feed the People Dallas. You can also Google Mutual Aid Texas to find more. And there are people who are still going to be having issues for a while now, even though we are now back to normal, beautiful Texas weather. So thanks for listening. We'll be back in a sec. Okay, so we're here with Lars, not Duckett, but Doucet. Lars and I were kind of tweeting back and forth amid everything that was going on in Texas. So the reason that I decided to have him on this show is because I just feel like we both had a lot to say about it, and I think that it's difficult to convey what happened over the past week and what is still ongoing. It's difficult to convey the the severity of the issue, because it really is kind of like, and I don't blame people for not
like just for context, we were both without power, heat, all of that for quite some time, and people we know still to some degree aren't.
Yeah. We're gonna get into the specifics of our situations, but it's just something that I don't blame people for not totally absorbing or understanding the severity of what happened here and is happening over the past week. It's just difficult to convey. So I thought that maybe using this venue to talk about some game developer related stuff, with a game developer like Lars, but also just talk about this happened, and maybe people can gain a better understanding of the situation down here by listening to us rattle on about it.
Yeah, it's so weird. Like, my first game dev project professionally was an educational game called Super Energy Apocalypse, in which you, as the leaders of the post-apocalyptic Republic of New Texas, have to balance your energy grid so it doesn't death spiral. And it was funded by an educational, but a non-profit, nonpartisan environmental research group called Houston Advanced Research Center. So right in Houston. Mm-hmm. And so I have a lot of background knowledge about natural gas and coal and wind and solar and all that. And then this happens 15 years later after I'm doing all kinds of other stuff. And it's really kind of eerie to me.
That's wild. I didn't even realize that, from having you on. I know from your games and from working working for Valve on different Steam projects. I didn't know about what's the name of
It's called Super Energy Apocalypse, and most of you probably can't play it anymore because it was a Flash game. It's still up on Congregate. It's free. Probably got played more than any other game I ever made, even like the ones that did well on Steam, which is hilarious. But it was like, yeah, like I went and I did all the research on different kinds of energy generation. And so like, it does little things like when the wind stops blowing, the turbines turn off, like nuclear produces nuclear waste, like, what is the relative cost versus the relative emissions of natural gas versus coal? Like I had to crunch all those numbers, probably badly because I was like 20, but, like I still retain a little bit of that, but it's like so weird now. Also, another background fact about me is I'm Norwegian, like a passport holder. It's my first language. And it's so weird being in Texas, being this damn cold. Like, I feel like it's kind of like finally a chance to use my degree kind of situation. Because, like if you have Norwegian relatives, they'll just, like, make you all these sweaters and stuff. And you're like, that's great. I love it. It's so beautiful. You work so hard. I live in Texas. And I'm like, today the prophecy is fulfilled.
You open up the the treasure chest of just of sweaters that you've been saving up this whole time.
Yeah, seriously. Like I have, and also have like a Russian friend, like from my church. She's Russian, and her son's grown up now, so she's like, here's all these ski bibs I can't use anymore. You have use for them? It's like, yeah, I might go visit my relatives in Norway one day, so we'll put the kids in those. And it's like, we use those. I'm so glad we had this stuff.
Where are you exactly in Texas? Don't need your address or even like, where are you in general in Texas?
I'm in the Brazos Valley. I'm in central Texas, right?
Okay.
So there's a Texas triangle between, I always embarrass myself and get one of the cities wrong, but it's like Austin, Dallas, and Houston, and San Antonio. I forget which one is the one that's supposed to be the western edge of it. I think it's either Austin or San Antonio, right? But I don't know which one's... It's Austin is closer. Okay, I know geography. So we're like in the middle of that triangle, right? And, we're close to Texas A&M University, and there's like a big medical hub here. And that's where I am. And you're in Austin, right?
Yeah. I'm in Austin suburbs. I've been down here for going on 7 years. And it wasn't quite like my relatives are sending it from Norway are sending me sweaters, but like I felt like I spent about like 33 years or something like that in Indiana, northern Indiana, so I felt like a total badass when I found my ice scraper and like, cause I had to, the roads are terrible. This is like, of course there's zero infrastructure for clearing roads at all.
And that's something like, okay.
Zero as in nothing. And
this is something that like, I think we'll get into like how many heads should roll about this probably in a minute, but like just a perspective for people, and I say this as someone who like you've lived in Indiana where presumably it gets cold, and you've lived here. I'm a Norwegian. I'm a pathetic excuse for a Norwegian. Like I speak the language, but like I mostly only went there in the summer. Yeah. Like I've not had to endure like a black Norwegian winter where the sun does not come up, right? But like I have any kind of absorbed by osmosis experience at all with winter weather, and I think people like Canadians and like people in the north are like, oh, Texas can't handle a little snow, huh? It's like it's like it was 5 degrees Fahrenheit, which is like sub-freezing by a lot in Texas. Parts of Mexico were snowing. Like this is the equivalent of 105 degrees Fahrenheit in Oslo. Like now, I think there's probably, when all is said and done and cooler heads have prevailed and we're done dunking on each other on Twitter and actually looking at the information, we're going to find, like, what was the actual cause of this, and probably we should have done better preparing. But it's like, this was kind of unprecedented. But I also want to talk about the fact that, like, pardon my French, unprecedented shit is happening all the time now. Like, just before this, like, I had 2 500-year floods in my area, just locally. Hurricane Harvey came a couple years ago and like whacked my brother's apartment to death in Houston, and I had some friends had to evacuate and stay locally. Like that was awful. And then and like the amount of water that was dumped on Houston was ridiculous. And then like we're in the middle of a global pandemic already, right? You know?
That's the other thing. It's a disaster within a disaster.
I mean, let's talk about our personal experiences here. Okay. I think you've had it worse than I have. I've had power Like I had 3 days of really bad stuff.
Yeah.
And what that looked like for me is probably easy mode compared to you and some other stories I've had from friends and relatives.
Yeah. Let's go to I want to just return to where you said like people from Norway, or for that matter, people from northern Indiana or like anywhere in the Midwest that gets way colder than this. I mean, we're talking about like double digit negative wind chill like type stuff and
negative Fahrenheit, right?
Fahrenheit. Yeah. So
that's like super cold.
Yeah. And it didn't get that cold. It did get down to like 5-7 degrees, like where I am, but it's kind of like, I can handle that. So I was dismissive about it on Twitter because like I get annoyed with, because I saw at the beginning of the pandemic people hoarding stuff that from grocery stores, for example, that they don't need, and I my feeling is that you're leaving your neighbor in the lurch if you're taking more than your share. It was, to me, that was overdoing it. Like, why are you panicking? Why are you panicking to that extent? Like, it's, it'll be fine.
I have a lot to say about prepper culture because I know some preppers. But
yeah, so
we'll get into that in a sec. Go ahead.
Yeah, and a day later, so our power went out right at midnight on Sunday, and it stayed off for the coldest part of all this. It was out for 36 hours straight.
Yeah.
So,
oh my gosh.
Yeah, and we're lucky, and this is one thing. What's cool about like Texans that I see them tweeting about this. Almost everybody is like, I had no water for this amount of time, and no heat and power for this amount of time, and it's always couched in. And I'm one of the lucky ones. I always see people saying that, and that's how I feel. Like.
Yeah, like the fact that we were having a podcast about this and I was able to like live tweet the thing because I never lost cell service and I had rolling blackouts. Like I had 4 hours of power a day on the good days, like 2 hours on the bad days, and they were like it was 1 hour at a time spread out evenly. So it was like big dark periods, but like some of my like direct relatives, I'm talking like brothers, sisters-in-laws and stuff like that, like some of them didn't get power back until like yesterday, and some of them still don't have water, and like they went 52 72 hours without like anything. It was insane.
Yeah. And
like maybe some like and then you just think of like all the homeless, all like poor people and stuff, and the counties that have really like one thing it really impressed upon me was the importance of my local utility. Like there's all this hoopla going on with ERCOT, which is, for those who don't know, that's like the managing entity for the whole Texas grid. But your local utility has like how good they are at getting it down power lines. So like dealing with just infrastructure damage versus rationing, right? And then their rationing strategy too. Like they were able to like it's kind of like a video game to like keep a grid up, right? It's like you got to keep your people, you got to give them enough power to like get them through this crisis, but you also got to like manage the strain on the grid, and like everyone's pissed at you because you're rationing their energy, but you have to do it right or everyone's going to get screwed. And they were able to give us a couple hours of juice a day, evenly spaced, communicate with us when it was happening through the local like news station and stuff. And everyone was like giving them all this flack because they're mad it was happening at all. But then I hear about these other stories, like where you were and other places, and it's like maybe they had it harder there, but like, man, they did a bang-up job, and maybe they had good circumstances too. But I'm so grateful for my local utility. So if anyone here listening works for BTU Utilities in the Brazos Valley, I am super grateful for all of your hard work. Like we talk about frontline essential workers, that's them out freezing their asses off to literally keep their friends and neighbors alive.
It's kind of like, oh, wow, everything does run on electricity. So we have, obviously, like, a power outage. It's like, lights off, you lose your Wi-Fi. Like, obviously, that kind of thing. It's like, okay, I can deal with that. We've got gas. Our house is heated with gas. Well, our furnace is activated by electricity, and it runs.
Oh, that's
yeah. So and then it's like, okay, but we still have water. Well, the water plant runs on electricity.
Right.
And it's like, now you don't have water. You don't have,
Exactly.
Yeah, and all this stuff just dominoes.
My thermostat is digital, right?
Yeah.
Which means they're telling me, like, they're doing good communication, right? They're like, guys, everyone, shut off your heat so when the power comes back on, it doesn't instantly get shut off from the instant load. And I'm like, when the lights go back on for my 1 hour, like, my hello? Did it happen again? Oh, it's just my screensaver. Oh my God. I've got PTSD.
Oh my gosh. That's awful.
Okay. I was like,
man.
no.
I was
does it
just
have to be-
picturing you. Oh man, we're keeping that. That's awful.
Yeah, that's okay. That's hilarious though. That's the kind of humor we need to get through these
I'm
times.
moving my mouse right now to make sure that I don't get freaked out and wake my computer back up.
Yeah.
Okay.
So anyway, what was I saying? Yeah. So like I have this digital thermometer, right? And so like the utility is telling me it's essential that I wait 15 minutes before I turn my heat on when I get my rationed hour of power for the next like 10-hour block, and I can't do it because the power shut off while I had the heat on, and I can't change the thermometer setting because it's digital. I have to like run like a ninja when the light comes on to go, okay, system, heat, off, done.
Yeah. Oh, geez. And like, that's impressive that you even got that communication. So we were, okay, let's, we're going back. Yeah. It's like for my household, and I've got kids,
Me too. Yeah.
Yeah. And, so 36 hours of that, we're luckily we have a gas range so we can boil water. I was like, the whole water thing, it started like we got a handle on staying warm, and our town tweeted out the amount of water is like two make sure that you have 2 gallons of water per person for over the next 36 hours. And boil it. And I was thinking like, what? Because at that point our water hadn't already gone out. It must have at that point just been draining out of the rest of our pipes. Mm-hmm. But we were collecting the dripping with pots and bowls and stuff.
Right.
And I saw that 36 hours and I was like, what are they getting at here? It's like, certainly they're just not gonna turn off the water because people need that to drink and live. And they did. And we resorted to, so we went from level 1, water gatherer people who were like, okay, we can get like these drippings in pots and pans and we can boil them, and then we can use those. And then once those were done, like my wife Anna, she became like a level 100 water farmer out back, collecting like we drank the roof water. I know that it's like last resort stuff, but like, what else are you gonna do? So we're drinking the roof water and boiling it. I'm scooping like snow. I took a 5-gallon paint bucket and went to the backyard and filled our bathtub with snow so that we would have that reserved there, and we would use that to flush toilets mainly. And yeah, we didn't drink out of the bathtub, but we did drink some boiled snow and roof water.
And you were filtering that too, so like you would boil it and then filter it through paper towels, you'd said?
Yes. Yeah. We had a strainer, and then we would just put a couple layers of paper towel down and just run that baby through.
I'm really impressed that, but we never lost our water. They did give us a notice that we might lose water, and I want to make sure, maybe not now, but like talk about the issue of like panic prepping versus like making sure that you can take care of yourself so you can also take care of other people, because I think that's a distinction that is really important.
Go ahead and talk. Go ahead. Yeah. Like, give me your thoughts on that.
Well, like, so an example. Okay, you get a notice that you're about to lose water. What does everybody do? They go fill up their bathtub, right? And then the act of everyone filling up their bathtub puts strain on the water system and causes it to crash down for everyone, right?
Yeah.
It's like everyone doing a run on the store and panic buying all the paper, the toilet paper. Like,
yeah, our water people said specifically, do not do that.
Right.
Yeah.
And so that is where like planning ahead matters, because I did fill up my bathtub but I did it early, I did it. That's the trick with all these things, is you have to prepare before it's obvious there's a crisis, when you might still be embarrassed for preparing, right? Because like if I go to Walmart, not now, but if I go to Walmart like 3 days ago and I just buy a bunch of stuff, I'm not being a strain on anybody. If I do it right when Walmart just makes a bunch of money and then they order new stuff, right? You know, if I do it right when there's a crisis, then I'm doing like damaging hoarding, because other people need that stuff, and I'm causing a crisis by causing a run on the stores. And also when people do runs on stores, they buy all the wrong stuff. Like they just like buy all the ketchup and all kinds of weird things, you know. They're just like, you know, it's because they're panicking, right? And it's like and so like even something like filling up your tub, you can do it the right way or the wrong way. And I'm so impressed by your resourcefulness, because we never lost water. You know, the prep work that we did though was I always try to do the smallest amount of prep work I can that is going to be useful no matter what. So for instance, I have a Berkey filter. If you don't know what those are, they're like really top of the line water filter. Like Brita's like level 1, this is like level 100. Big aluminum or whatever cylinders, these big filters. They use them all over the world. Like NGOs use them throughout like every kind of devastated country with like no safe water supply, right? And they're just gravity fed filters, no like moving parts, no electrical parts, no nothing, you know. And you just put water in the top. It doesn't matter how awful and brackish it is. Like they love to do this test with like food coloring in the top, and then it like comes out all clear. And so if you just order one of those after a crisis is over and not about to start, and just have one in your garage, then like I wish I could have shipped you mine, you know, by jumping into my time machine and giving it to you. Your life would have been a lot easier, because I certainly didn't wind up having to use it this time, but I'm glad I had it, because I live next to a creek, and when it's freezing cold, it's snowing. Usually we prepare for a drought, not like freezing to death. But like I could have poured brackish water from my creek that is probably full of every kind of amoeba and drain chemical possible, and had fresh water, you know. And but like filling up your bathtub the minute you know your water's about to go off in 10 minutes is going to cause your water to go off in 2 minutes. It's all the same resources that we're pulling from. And I'm taking notes on the filter too. And it's funny that, you know, so like my dad was older. Like he was born in 1930, and anybody who lived through the Great Depression has these different, you know, quirks like hoarding. It's like keeping everything. My mom grew up in Norway post-war without electricity, which is like hardcore. My mom was born in the Philippines, and they were the most abject poverty. So she also has these, you know, these resourceful like cells in her body that, you know, are thinking about when you have nothing. And then your brain start, like, even through like 1 week of this, you know, like just a week, your brain is already, by the end of it, is adjusting to like when you're hearing the snow melting right now and dripping away. It's like that we're wasting, like that's wasteful. Like we right. Yeah. We should be collecting that water. like I had filled up my tub, you know, before I thought there would be a crisis, before there was any notice, you know, because it's just I'm not trying to tub shame you, by the way. No. I understand it. But like I'm afraid to drain the tub now. Like I'm like if I drain it, I might need that water. I'm just like, I've got the filter, but like I don't want to drink creek water. You know? And it's like I'm afraid now, you know, and it was so funny because we were so blessed with the intermittent power, the rationed 4 hours of power a day, that like when the lights came on, we had like, at first we didn't know what to do, but we got a little dance. I was like, okay, charge the phones. All right, turn off the furnace. Yeah. Okay, everybody, like, you know, it's like that feeling when the power comes back on. So like ours was out for 36. It was on for 6, and then it was off for like 14 or 15 more hours. Right. And then it finally came back on and stayed. Oh, so the first time the power came back on, it was about at like 4 a.m, I think, and our fire alarms all went off. So no. Yeah, it was just like, what the heck is going on? And we couldn't get them to shut off.
So I had to get on my ladder and then just uninstall all of them because there was nothing that we could do. And I was looking around and smelling for smoke, and it's like, okay, this is definitely a false alarm. And it wasn't the carbon monoxide alarm because it's a different alarm. It says carbon monoxide.
Oh, the carbon monoxide is such a thing though. It's because you're like, I should get in my car and shut the garage door. And
it's so sad because you see people hospitalized or even die every time something like this happens because someone got carbon monoxide from poisoning from charcoal, using charcoal inside. And yes, of course, people use generators in a closed garage and it just poisons the whole house.
Right, and you can't tell that it's happening, and you just get sleepy and die.
Yeah.
I have a fireplace too, and I kicked myself. This is where prepping is all about, like smart prepping, not crazy prepping. It's all about thinking ahead.
Yeah.
Half the things I did, the real resource is family and friends and communication. Because half the stuff I did is not because I'm smart. It's because someone told me offhand a couple days before this all went down.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And I'm kicking myself about my fireplace because I've got a fireplace and I couldn't figure out, it took me forever to figure out that I could actually burn logs in it. And my Norwegian mom had given me a gift of these beautiful decorative birch logs. But they're they'll burn. And I have 10 of them. I'm like, we could burn that wood.
Yeah.
I was sure this fireplace wouldn't set my attic on fire. Because 6 years ago, we had someone come look at our dryer vent. And what's funny is the people who fix dryer vents are the same people who sweep chimneys. Chimney sweeps re-specialized and retrained in dryer vents when all the fireplace work dried up. They mostly do dryer vents, but they still do fireplaces. And we had them come out for a dryer vent 6 years ago. And it's oh, you've got a nice fireplace here. I'm like, yeah, it's Texas. We'll never use it. And he's like, yeah, well, if you ever do want to use it, you should get me by to inspect it so you don't set your attic on fire based on how your insulation's done. And so, I'm there with my fireplace. And I'm like, do I risk it?
Yeah.
But I'm like, power's rationed. We've got heat. We'll do it if we're about to die, but no.
Yeah. Oh, I smoked a chicken on the coldest night. We needed I don't know, we needed food for a couple
for those who don't
days.
know, Kris Graft is an amazing barbecue grill master. He's the best, I'm told.
Well, I mean, I'm not bad.
He's as amazing as he is modest. Folks, it is a treat.
Yeah, it's true. So I smoked this chicken and
he smokes chicken the way he smokes noobs.
I don't know about that. Lars, what are you talking about? But it gave me it was at that point I checked and it was 14 degrees on its way down to 7. And yeah, I sat out there with the chicken. I didn't want to go back inside and outside because I'm letting what remains of the heat. Right. And luckily our house, even after 36 the first 36 hours, it got down to 50 inside, which is impressive that it was able to maintain that.
That the insulation was good enough?
Yeah. So we just dressed at night we just dressed like winter.
Right. They say heat your body, not the room, you know? Yeah. I slept in long underwear, PJ pants and sweatpants and a shirt, an undershirt, a jacket, another jacket, and a hat.
Yeah, exactly. Me too. It was I was going out, to the grocery store during an Indiana winter, and I just slept like that.
Yeah, and my mom was saying, my mom, who grew up in Norway where it gets this cold and power had not been brought to her rural village yet, so that was just how life was. She's like, wear a hat, son. You need to wear a hat because most of your energy gets gets lost through your head. It's all these little survival tips from the old country.
It's so true. I put a hat on and I got warm and and I know this stuff, but I only reappreciated it when this past week happened.
My life didn't depend on it until now.
Yeah, and I'm telling him, hey, everyone, try the hat. Go get a hat. It really works. Yeah. So if we're talking about systems and things like that, you talked about the game that you designed. Is there have you even had any chance to kind of think about and analyze what happened as far as the Texas grid goes and anything like that?
Yeah. Oh my,
Has your game design head kind of
yeah.
automatically went there?
There's a whole genre of games that are all about balancing power grids, right? And
balance of power.
Yeah. So like, there was this really fun like flash game, like tower defense game called the Space Game, which is all just like about building a power grid. More recently on Steam, there's a game called Mindustry, which has okay, that's just my screensaver again. Can you hear me, Chris?
Yeah. How many times is this going to happen?
I think it is literally PTSD. I think I'm not abusing the term.
That is what's happening to you. You're not even on video or anything. It's palpable. Your panic is palpable.
Yeah. So anyway, yeah. So like, Mindustry, I haven't played Victoria, but I assume it has it. And of course my game had it. So
yeah.
The thing about energy grid games is they're all about death spirals, right? Like cascading failure. Something goes wrong, which causes something else to go wrong, and then something else you weren't even paying attention to, and and taking for granted goes wrong too, and then you're just screwed. So in Energy Apocalypse, it's this like really simple one-screen tower defense game where you build like a power grid, right? So you mine coal out of the ground, and then you burn it in coal power plants. And the coal power plants give you energy, but they also create emissions. And then the shtick of the game is that I just take all negative externalities and just arbitrarily reify them as mutant alien zombies. And the rule is they're invading Earth and they're terraforming it, and everything that is bad for us in terms of pollution is good for them. And so the more you pollute, the stronger the enemy gets. And so like you're burning all this energy and stuff, and you've got lots of energy, and then your defenses are powered by your materials. So you have floodlights that use energy, and you have Tesla coils that use energy. You have guns that use metal that you mine out of the ground. You have flamethrowers that use oil or gas, whatever's available, right? Mm-hmm. And so as you're going through the game, it's night. And so your solar panels stop working because it's night, or the wind stops blowing and your wind turbines don't work anymore. And or you run out of coal and your coal fire plant, which is just like amazing for generating energy, stops working. And then you build a couple of units so that you can like defend yourself, and you used up all your metal and your guns stop working, right? And you have these like cascading failure on cascading failure. And so typically like you're doing pretty good until you stop paying attention to something, it goes down, and then like you can't get back up. And like the challenge is like not falling so far down the slope.
Yeah.
And there's also this inherent trade-off between efficiency and redundancy, right? Like an efficient system is one that has no waste, and usually super efficient systems like run to the wire. Like to use a metaphor, like just like an Olympic athlete, right, has like 0% body fat. They're just made completely for running, say, right? It's super efficient, because that's what it takes to get that extra bit of performance. But if they get the flu, they're gonna just like die because they have no body fat, they have no reserves, right? And then there's also just mismanagement, which is neither efficient nor redundant, and it's just bad,
Yeah, it's interesting. Like when you're talking about cascading failures and mismanagement, it's interesting emerging from the past few days when you're conserving your cell phone power. You don't have any access to like TV or your laptop, so you're basically kind of in the dark about a lot of things, and emerging from it and then seeing the way that people like politicians, for example, the things that they're talking about, like whereas there's now this, that people are like, our governor is using this as an energy,
right?
Like pitting fossil fuels against renewable energy, like windmills. And like there was at one point at the beginning of it, like somebody mentioned to me mentioned windmills, and then this was like on Monday. It's like, well, it's because of the windmills, like, and it's like, what? Like I didn't know what they were talking about. And you emerge from this, and it's like, people are using this as a debate point about like different kinds of energy. It's like, this is what you all were talking about, like when we're trying to figure out the roof water situation. And like those things need to be talked about, and they need to be considered within like the overall power grid and tech and stuff. But to see the discourse around that, that's happening where while people in Texas are suffering, it grosses me out.
Yeah, it did me too, and it's like, it's a little weird for me because like, on the one hand, like a lot of my family is really conservative, right? And the other hand, I'm also Norwegian, and the Norwegian side is like a little more liberal, but like not in the way Americans expect at all. Like Norwegians can be pretty provincial and not part of like America's idea of what liberal means. But then also like my entire game dev like Twitter feed and friends are all like really far left, right? And so like I feel like conflicted because like I log on, just check in what's going on, and like everyone's having this like big, like it seems the impression I get, which is probably false, is that everyone has these strong opinions. And of course, like, yeah, Abbott and Cruz going to freaking Cancun and all that nonsense. Like, I'm not a fan of our state leadership by any means. But, like, I feel like everyone's, like, really busy making sure they score enough political points while, like, we're fucking freezing, and so are all our friends and family. And, like, and I see... And the really thing that, like, saddens me is when people who should know better are, like... really like happy about it. Like that makes me
that was weird because I saw that also, and the only reason like the terrible stuff that people are saying about like but basically what we're talking about is Texas is and has been a red state. There's Republican leadership, and there are some people that are just like, well, that's what you get, and it's kind of like, oh, okay.
We got this back in Hurricane Harvey as well. It's like, well, you believe in climate change now, and it's like, thanks, my brother might be drowning, but good for you for being correct on the internet.
Yeah, and then like it's weird for me too because, like I said, like growing up in Indiana, no one talks about Indiana. No one talks about Indiana. And then, like, when I come to Texas, like, Texas is the central point for, like, politics and climate and this being... It's just weird to log on and, like, see, people that, aren't having the experience that we're all having have such strong opinions about it.
Yeah,
so it's a new thing to me.
You want to know something hilarious? In Norway, we literally have a catchphrase that's like decades old called "That thing is totally Texas," or in Norwegian it goes "Det där är skikkelig Texas, ja."
Yeah.
And it means about what we expect. It's like totally crazy, guns blazing, insane. Yeah. And it's like, I mean, Texas looms larger than life because it is like, if Texas was a person, which it's not, and it's important to establish that. It would be this very like self-assured kind of braggy person. I mean, Texas has great PR in terms of getting lots of it, whether all of it is positive or not, right? But I think what people are reacting to on the internet is this, very braggadocious, like larger than life Texas attitude. I mean, I know people who have said things like, let the Yankees freeze in the dark whenever, someone's like, well, if you want green energy, then, coal and natural gas is what keeps you warm at night. It's so weird. One thing that does bug me about Abbott talking about like windmills and stuff, one thing I think a lot of people are surprised to know is that Texas in many ways like is this world that contains multitudes and contradictions. Like it is oil and gas capital of the United States and the world. But you might also wonder like LARS is a Norwegian in Texas. That's kind of weird. It's not super weird. Like this isn't the reason I'm here. It's just because my mom married my dad. But there's a lot of Norwegians in Texas, actually. They're all in Houston because Norway is also oil and gas producer of the world. And, like Texas, a leader in green energy, which is so weird. No one thinks of Texas as a leader in green energy. But, like, if you look at charts of wind and solar and nuclear, it's like we're really, really up there. And that's why I feel kind of, like, angry about people... I do feel resentful, like the whole like ragging on windmills because everything went down. And I do want to underscore this point, and this point is really important. I really wish in the wake of any crisis, everyone would just shut up for 72 hours and not have not proclaim themselves an expert on whatever domain just happened, and just like look for some evidence. Like I am all in favor of heads rolling. Like yes, let the heads roll, but the problem is that a stopped clock, i.e. read, idiot politician, can be right 2 times a day, just like a stopped clock. And when we just like go off and like instantly it's like, oh, I know what the reason is. It's the thing that it's my dead horse that I'm beating is the reason. It's like, you're going to be wrong sometimes. And when you're wrong, that politician is going to love it. And he's never going to shut up about it for 6 months. And the only thing that matters, which is making sure that we take care of human beings and that this crisis doesn't happen again, is going to get lost in all that, you know?
Yeah.
There was one take I've read in the last 72 hours from someone who actually provided a bunch of evidence for what went wrong, and he might be wrong. I don't know if his account is going to check out, but he said, here's the data I have. I've tried to be fair about this, and my conclusion is that there was a problem in Texas, but we might have this problem nationwide. And the fact that Texas has an isolated grid, and this is something a lot of people are dogging on, oh, those Texans hate that federal regulation, and federal regulation would have saved them. Maybe. Like, that could, I'm 100% willing to believe that. But another thing that's equally possible is that the grid being isolated kept Oklahoma and Louisiana and neighboring states from going down too. Right?
Yeah, I hadn't thought about that. Yeah, for like listeners that haven't picked up on this yet, like the power grid from Texas, it's its own. It's isolated from everything else, and nearby states that have that had just as bad icing and things like that ended up faring so much better than we did.
Right. And so the conclusion is, okay, like you look at a map, Texas is like as black and dark as North Korea is on a nighttime map, right? And so everyone's like, okay, well, Texas screwed the pooch. It's all their fault. Their infrastructure sucks. You know, and maybe it is, you know, but like I'm not an expert in, you know, power grid engineering, despite the fact that I made a Flash game 12 years ago, you know. So like I really wish just you can wait 72 hours. Like the truth can wait that long. And then we'll figure out who's really to blame, and then you know, and then we can have all the righteous fury we want, because then we'll actually be directed in a positive, useful direction to actually solve a problem, rather than just score a bunch of little red hearts on Twitter.
Yeah.
Right.
I like the little red hearts.
They're so addictive. I love them, and they just erode my soul.
So there's a couple other things I want to talk about. So again, with the cascading, like. Failure. Apparently, like I was reading a really good article today on Texas Monthly about what has happened, and it's a really good, clear, telling of what happened, and it's kind of what you're talking about. It's a step back, looking at things in very near hindsight. And it's called, like, the title of it is the Texas blackout is the story of a disaster foretold. So, with the benefit of hindsight, it talks about why this happened, why the systems failed, and how close we actually were to going total blackout. So,
right.
Like, we were able to maintain, some levels of energy at different places in the state, but apparently something happens like where everything is gone. And once everything is gone, there is a really complicated way that they have to use like diesel generators to start different plants across the state. And it sounds like you're hand cranking like an old timey car, right. Except multiplied by like a trillion.
Yeah, it's I've been kind of a sort of like keeping at an arm's length from, but morbidly interested in what's called collapse porn, which is just like post-apocalyptic literature, right? And fiction and non-fiction accounts of like what happened in Argentina and Venezuela, like, and stuff like that. And prepper culture who have these doomsday obsessions. And like, here's kind of where I'm at. Like when I tell people I do some light prepping, like you get that pushback. It's like, oh, you're one of those people who hoards the toilet paper. And I'm like there's this kind of person who's never been through a crisis before who doesn't really get it, and they think that it's about selfishness. And it can be, because there's certainly people who like, F you, got mine, gonna get my bunker, gonna shoot anyone who knocks on the door, right? Those people certainly exist, and they have weird fantasy books that I've read that are disturbing. But there's another school of thought that's like, do you have a fire extinguisher in your house? That's the most likely crisis that's going to happen to you. And do you know where it is? Do you have a drill to go get it? If I say fire right now, will you know? And like when I said that in some chat room, or someone immediately pointed, it's like, that happened to me. There was a fire. I didn't know where the fire extinguisher was. I almost died. And you build general survival skills. Like, you don't have to plan for the zombie apocalypse. Like, I have a Berkey filter. I built that in case the water was shut off. I never anticipated a blizzard in Texas, but now I can filter water if I have to for the cost of $100.
And this is obvious, but like it this past week really drove the point home, like how reliant we are on systems and how there is like a single node of failure that shuts everything down, and then you get the cascading failure that you were talking about.
Yeah, and some people say, like, if you get too much if you drink too much of the prepper Kool-Aid, the problem is, like, you start preparing for the complete breakdown of society, and it takes on this very, like, anarchist kind of everyone out for themselves mentality, where it's like raiders are going to come and, like, eat your flesh and stuff, and like, people are going to shoot you, and so you got to shoot first. But the other perspective is, it's like society doesn't have to be this fragile. Like, we can build a better society that is a little better. And then at the same time, we can stop waiting for... I really hate this one attitude I see a lot among otherwise enlightened liberals that I look up to, is when they're like, it's not worth taking any personal measures. We just have to, like, take over the government and make a perfect society. And it's like, I'm not going to feel bad that I'm not going to wait for a perfect society to emerge. I don't think it's selfish to take care of my family so that I am not a burden on everyone else, so that I can have some overflow to help my neighbor, right? Yes. So, like, if my neighbor is freezing and I'm not in the middle of dying, I have a warm house she can stay in, right? And I think if we focus a little more on the local aspect of government and just society and just helping each other out, I mean, I think that the term of art is mutual aid, then we can build a more robust, to use the Silicon Valley fancy pants term, anti-fragile society.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's funny because that's the last point that I wanted to talk about how kind people, in my experience during this, have been. We have local restaurants that are already completely, hammered by the pandemic and not being able to, run business as usual. They're giving away food. And one of the, so we have down here, we have P. Terry's, which is like a fast food place. And there's one that is pretty close to us, and they got a shipment of food, and there was just and this was sad. There was a line of cars, just a couple miles long or whatever. There were a lot of cars going through this fast food drive-through, and all of those represent. I'm just like, these aren't people. You're not going to wait hours in line because you just want a taco. These people must not have food. They're people who are desperate to get food. And one of the things that I read is that, that Anna told me, my wife, said that she saw that people were paying for the people behind them, and just going down the line like that. There's that kind of thing. We have people who are offering up, somebody's out of medicine for their kids, and they're sick, and you can't go to the pharmacy, but they need it. Post that on the Facebook group and is like, where are you? I'm bringing it there. Do you need anything else? That type of thing.
And nobody is asking if you voted for Ted Cruz or not before they extend some help.
Mm-hmm. We'll deal with that afterwards. For now, we'll get you fed. I'm thankful that you and your family and sounds like your community are on the other side of this. I'm just hopefully we all learn something from this.
I think we should just close with the fact that this isn't over. A lot of people that you're not hearing from have it much worse because of survivorship bias, because they can't tell you how bad it is. The damage, even once the temperatures are back up and the power's back on and the water's back on for everyone, the lingering damage is going to last.
Yeah, I agree with that. And everyone out there, take care. We'll go back to our regularly scheduled 100% game developer-centric conversations next time. And thanks for hanging out with us. Take care.
Definitely going to play Frostpunk now.
Oh, yeah.